The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Sadyr Zhaparov, President of the Kyrgyz Republic. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Sadyr Zhaparov, President of the
Mr. Secretary General, Mr. President, distinguished heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to congratulate the High Representative of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Dennis Francis, on his election as the President of 78th session of the UN General Assembly. I would like to wish you success and fruitful accomplishments in this important position. You can count on the support of Kyrgyzstan during your presidency. I express my gratitude to the President of previous 77th session of UN General Assembly, the representative of Friendly Hungary, Mr. Csaba Kőrösi, for his active work and support for his international initiatives of Kyrgyzstan. Ladies and gentlemen, today the world is at a turning point. We are all witnessing and seeing with our own eyes the negative changes in the world order, increasing geostrategic competition between major powers and their blocs. Geopolitical tensions are leading to the fact that the world is moving towards fragmentation into regional, sub-regional, financial, and economic blocks and systems. It is also obvious that the governments of various countries will be compelled or forced to make economic, technological, geopolitical choices. Among the shocks on a global scale that have not become a thing of the past, I would like to note the spread of coronavirus infection, which cost humanity millions of lives and economic losses exceeding $12 trillion. The world today is experiencing the highest inflation rates and food prices not seen in the last 60 years. The risk of geoeconomic fragmentation, according to the International Monetary Fund, could lead to a drop in global gross domestic product by 7%. The decline in trust between different countries and groups of countries is alarming. However, I am convinced that current global challenges and risks, from climate and crisis and the threat to food security to growing inequality, should, on the contrary, unite all the members of the international community. It is vital to build a multilateral system that does not allow further fragmentation of geopolitical landscape in the world. Were international conditions easier 78 years ago, when the United Nations was just beginning its work after the bloodiest and most destructive war in human history than it is today? Were the contradictions between the countries, especially political and ideological, less acute than in our time? What prevents member states from hearing one another and trying to overcome the differences and establish a dialogue? Over the past years, despite the Iron Curtain and military bloc thinking, the UN has been and remains the most legitimate and commonly recognized platform of diplomacy, uniting developed and developing large and small countries. Kyrgyzstan strongly supports the UN as the only universal, intergovernmental, international organization mandated by all member states to find solutions to the challenges and threats that constantly arise before humanity. I count on our organization under the leadership of Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres, and with effective support of member states to find mechanisms and ways to more effectively perform all its functions and assist member states in solving pressing global issues and overcoming challenges. This is especially crucial in supporting sustainable development through the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. I call on all member states to provide unconditional political support to the organization and its Secretary General at this challenging time. I thank UN Secretary General for presenting the new Agenda for Peace policy brief with his vision for the future of multilateral security cooperation. We agree with the main thesis that the driving force behind the new multilateralism must be diplomacy. We are ready to work closely for a close and active work on a development of future pact during the future summit in 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking about Central Asia, I would like to note the following. We, representatives of Central Asian nations that are related and are proud of their millennia-old history and culture, we have a lot in common, traditions and customs. Much brings us together in terms of similarities in mentality, attitude, and the view of the world. The ongoing global processes have a direct impact on the stability and security in our Central Asian region, and on the other hand, they strengthen its role and significance. One of the highest priorities of our country is to strengthen our relations with countries of the region. I note with satisfaction that in recent years, regional cooperation in Central Asia has been developing consistently in all directions. I see our region as a unified geoeconomic space where all forms of economic cooperation interaction are successfully being formed. I see our region as a geopolitical intermediary through which the interaction and cooperation of members of international community are facilitated. I see our region as actively interacting and dynamically developing communities that share and support similar culture, historical and traditional values and beliefs. Kyrgyzstan intends to contribute to the strengthening of regional cooperation, discover new effective forms of collaboration, and effectively engage with various global centers of influence in both bilateral, multilateral formats. On the path to full regional integration, it is necessary to resolve issues related to legal delineation of state borders. Exactly 1 year ago, speaking from this podium, I, with a heavy heart, informed about the tragic events that occurred in September of the previous year related to the armed clashes on the Kyrgyz-Tajik border, which resulted in numerous casualties. Thanks to restraint of our peace-loving people and the prevailing political will on both sides, we managed to prevent further escalation of conflict and avert a full-scale bloodshed in the region. In this regard, I would like to emphasize that Kyrgyzstan did and will advocate resolving controversial issues exclusively through peaceful diplomatic means based on principles or norms of international law, such as territorial integrity and the non-use of force or threat of its use. We have never sought to take what belongs to others, but we will not allow anyone to take a single inch of our homeland. We always seek a dialogue and search for mutually acceptable solutions based on trust and mutual respect. Last December, after almost 30 years of negotiations, we signed an agreement with Uzbekistan on legal delineation of the state border. This historic decision reached thanks to demonstrated political will of the leaders of the two states has opened the broadest prospects for mutually beneficial cooperation, peace and peaceful coexistence of the two countries and its people. We maintain the same approach in our current negotiations. We want to live in peace, harmony, and friendship with all neighbors. Speaking of security and stability in Central Asia, it is essential to consider them in the context of the situation in Afghanistan. I consider it extremely important to remind the international community, that the people of Afghanistan are experiencing significant difficulties which are amplified by the lack of coordinated global stance on the situation in this country. It would not be an exaggeration on my part to say that Afghanistan is threatened by humanitarian crisis with its inevitable consequences for the security of not only the surrounding regions, but also for the entire world community. Kyrgyzstan is interested in a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Afghanistan. We call on the international community to continue providing humanitarian economic assistance to Afghan people. Ladies and gentlemen, just yesterday concluded the SDG summit, which once again reaffirmed the importance of unwavering commitment to sustainable development, identifying challenges in their implementation and outlining specific commitments by states. We are halfway to 2030, the deadline for reaching sustainable development goals. Kyrgyzstan, in its pursuit of achieving the sustainable development goals, currently ranks 45th out of 166 UN member states. We aim to be among the top 30 countries in reaching SDGs by 2030. The international community must breathe new life into these goals and strengthen solidarity in their attainment. It's important that we don't get lost in numbers, schedules, diagrams, and other economic intricacies, because the essence and core of the 70 goals are about people themselves. The year 2030 is very close, and we will have to ask ourselves, have the urgent needs and aspirations of humanity been addressed? Is it their security, prosperity, and well-being ensured? Are they happy? What does their future hold? Problems such as extreme poverty and climate change can only be solved by finding a global collective response. As rightly emphasized by the esteemed Secretary General of the UN in his report on financing sustainable development, without the means to invest in sustainable development and carry out transformations in energy and food systems, developing countries are falling behind on the path of achieving sustainable development goals. The current realities are such that developing countries are facing a dual challenge. They need to invest in development while simultaneously adapting to climate change. In this regard, we call for urgent action to implement Addis Ababa Action Agenda on financing for development, specifically for the swift establishment of the fund aimed at providing compensation to countries for losses and damages related to climate change, alleviating the burden of external debt, and improving the international architecture for debt resolution. Ladies and gentlemen, at previous climate change summits and conferences, ambitious statements and promises were made. It is also clear that the level of annual funding announced in 2015 under the Paris Agreement is no longer sufficient anymore. We consider it necessary to revise, significantly increase the level of funding that meets the real needs of countries vulnerable to climate change. Another issue is that a significant portion of the climate financing is provided to low and middle-income countries in the form of loans. There is also no distinction in the loan allocation procedures for projects with a cost of $1 million or $1 billion. This undermines the very essence and purpose of climate agreements. I have already reached out to our partners with a request to exchange external debt for environmental projects. Unfortunately, we have not yet received responses from most of the developed countries. Only the German government agreed to write off 15 million euros of debt. We would like to take this opportunity to thank the German government. We urge donors to reconsider their approach in favor of providing climate financing to countries on grant basis. We support the Bridgetown initiative proposed at the last climate conferences in Sharm el-Sheikh, as well as the calls made at the Summit for New Global Financial Pact in Paris in June this year to mobilize the necessary financing and structural reform of the international financial architecture. If we don't start doing this now, then injustice in the world will grow. Rich countries will continue getting richer, and poor countries will continue getting poorer. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of global change, mountainous regions have been particularly vulnerable. In Kyrgyzstan, mountains occupies about 94% of the territory. Mountain glaciers are the integral part of the Earth's cryosphere, influencing not only the climate of our planet, but also providing habitat for flora and fauna and supplying water to people. Climate change in Central Asia has led to intensive melting of glaciers. If earlier it was predicted that by 2050 the area of glaciers in Kyrgyzstan would be reduced by half, by 2100 they could disappear altogether. Now there is a reason to believe that this will happen much faster. This leads to aggravation of problems throughout the region, such as lack of water for drinking and agriculture, land degradation, and a threat to food security. In accordance with the latest assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the adverse effects of cryospheric changes are particularly acute for the residents of high mountain regions, where ecosystems have reached their limits of adaptation. In order to effectively preserve mountain ecosystems and glaciers, based on the resolutions previously adopted by the UN General Assembly on sustainable mountain development, our country, in collaboration with Global Mountain Partnership and other representatives of the UN system, has developed a global action plan. We are grateful to all partners, countries, and international organizations for their joint work. Kyrgyzstan advocates for the creation of a broad coalition of mountainous countries. We believe that climate adaptation and the transition to green economy will be among the main priorities of the future in coalition. As you may know, in 2022, at the initiative of our country and the Italian Republic, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted the resolution on sustainable mountain development, co-sponsored by 110 member states. This document declared the years from 2023 to 2027 as 5 years of action for the development of mountain regions. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to all UN member states for supporting our initiative. To further implement the UN resolution, I have signed a decree on declaring the years from 2023 to 2027 as the 5-year period of action for the development of mountain regions in the Kyrgyz Republic, and a national roadmap for the implementation of the 5-year period of action for the development of mountain regions for 2023 to 2027 has been developed, which will also be adopted shortly. The roadmap includes measures at the global, regional, national levels, including within the framework of existing prospective projects and measures related to SDGs. As the concluding stage of the 5-year action, we plan to host the second Global Mountain Summit, Bishkek Plus 25 in Kyrgyzstan in 2027, 25 years after the first summit. I would like to invite everyone from this distinguished rostrum to actively participate and make concrete commitments to preserve mountain ecosystems. We express our gratitude to partners from Group of Friends of Mountainous Countries, the Global Mountain Partnership, and the entire UN system for their comprehensive support of Kyrgyzstan's initiatives. We express our readiness to continue fruitful cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, for successful progress in addressing the current challenges and threats, we need to establish an effective system of international security. A key element of this mechanism is the United Nations Security Council. Today, more than ever, it is crucial to enhance its effectiveness in order to make this body fairer, more representative, and to increase its capacity to achieve consensus in decision-making. Progress is needed in negotiations on reform of the UN Security Council. Kyrgyzstan expresses its readiness to make its contribution to the cause of peace and security through effective peacemaking, respect for human rights, and the equal participation of women in peace and peace processes. We also aim to protect the interests of developing small, least developed and small island nations. We have put forward our candidacy for a non-permanent membership in UN Security Council for the 2027-2028 term and count on support from our esteemed member states. It is essential for all of us to adhere to principles such as trust, solidarity, and universality in international relations. Only together can we restore global and regional security architecture. Mr. President, dear friends, speaking about the challenges and issues of today, I would like to quote the words of our outstanding compatriot, Jusup Balasagin, who lived through 1020 to 1075 and gave guidance more than 1200 years ago by saying, "Our world is such that in order to unlock the gates of truth, you must grasp its essence." Nothing has changed since then. It's necessary to perceive the world as it is, in all its diversity and complexity. We, the member states of the UN, must transform our organization into the center of global efforts to prevent conflicts, reach compromise, do everything possible to establish peace and harmony. The one who walks the path will overcome it. Thank you for your attention.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Kyrgyz Republic for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly